If you've been in a conversation with many modern feminists, you've probably heard them bandying about the word privilege. If you're not a feminist, then you've got it, and probably a whole lot of it. Now, privilege is one of those conveniently vague words that's hard to pin down exactly, which makes it very adaptable and usable in a variety of situations, and it leaves the accuser generally free of the responsibility of defining exactly what it is and how it works in a given situation. The main problem with the feminist stance on this position is that it tends to be a one-sided static approach that precludes that men have privilege, especially white, cisgendered, heterosexual men, whereas women don't have privilege, or at least not a significant amount. For my money, I've heard it best put by Stardust, who said, and I'm paraphrasing, that when you really look at it, we are all privileged in a certain way. All of us who are fortunate enough to have been born in a modern first world country. Because when you think about it, the regular person's life is better than kings and emperors of the past. Clean running water, access to education, access to hot meals every day, etc., etc. And beyond that, if you look at it realistically, everyone has advantages. I guess we can call them privileges in varying situations. Depending on who or where we are at a given time, the scales of privilege will tip in the favor of men, women, black people, white people. It doesn't really matter. Simple common sense is all it takes to understand that as life is dynamic and changing, so does the balance of advantages shift and change. No one always or never holds some kind of privilege. Not all, but many feminists would of course deny this, and say with kindergarten simplicity that men are privileged and women are not. Now, let's set aside some of the obvious downsides to being male, like higher suicide rates, higher homicide rates, higher chances of being homeless, etc. Let's just set aside some of the obvious factors. It is trivial to disprove that women are always disadvantaged and underprivileged. I'm not even going to attempt to pick apart all the examples where women disproportionately hold advantages over men. I'm just going to focus on one of them. One of them that feminists have enjoyed since their earliest days. And here it is. Not perfectly, but in a disproportionate way to men, women are afforded the privilege of being taken at their word, of not being challenged when they don't provide concrete examples and evidence, of misusing, overusing, or incorrectly using terms, and generally getting a pass. Now, I happen to be born privileged with a penis between my legs, so unfortunately I can't get away with just saying that and rolling on. So let's take a look at some examples, shall we? First up is the lovely Valerie Solanas, the rad femme symbol of inspiration, who published the Scum Manifesto in 1967. Now let's do a little fact-checking on these claims, shall we? Okay, so page 1 of the manifesto, she says, life in this society being at best an utter bore, and no aspect of society being at all relevant to women, there remains to civic-minded, responsible, thrill-seeking females only to overthrow the government, eliminate the money system, institute complete automation, and destroy the male sex. It is now technically feasible to reproduce without the aid of males, or for that matter females, and to produce only females. We must begin immediately to do so. Retaining the male has not even the dubious purpose of reproduction. The male is a biological accident. The Y, male gene, is an incomplete X, female gene. That is, it has an incomplete set of chromosomes. In other words, the male is an incomplete female, a walking abortion, aborted at the gene stage. To be male is to be deficient, emotionally limited. Maleness is a deficiency disease, and males are emotional cripples. Now let's just step back and take a breath. Every sentence this woman writes is not only dripping with her poisonous hatred for men, it is so factually fucked up on an elementary level that to disprove any of it is completely trivial. The Y, male gene has an incomplete set of chromosomes? That is so funny on so many levels. First of all, the most obvious is that there is no such thing as an X or Y gene. She completely fucked it up and got it backwards, genes being inside of chromosomes. And on top of all that lunacy, the male is a biological accident? A walking abortion? That is one fucking hell of a claim she's making that she doesn't seem to feel the need to prove. I mean, goddamn, can you think of an animal species that is all female? And even if you could, what the fuck does it have to do with the always male-female human species? Now, if you read the writings of Elliot Rodger, the UC Santa Barbara shooter, you see a similar look into a warped mind. Yet in Rodger's case, he is quickly dismissed by society at large as a loser, a crybaby, and worse, a dangerous misogynist. Reading the two side by side, it's clear that both are absolute lunatics, yet one of them is hailed as something of a hero. And I'll give you a hint, it's the one with the vagina. In fact, on her Wikipedia page, she has been called the first outstanding champion of women's rights. A lot of people try to justify her manifesto as satire, something I might be inclined to believe if not for the other thing Valerie Solanas was famous for, which is the shooting and attempted murder of 3 people, including Andy Warhol. So, she didn't mean any of those thoughts in the Scum Manifesto? It was all just satire? Why the fuck is it so hard for us to call a female monster a monster? Speaking as the father of a 3-year-old boy, if Valerie Solanas is your hero, then seriously, fuck you. Let's move on to another example, shall we? Anita Sarkeesian, YouTube channel Feminist Frequency. She became famous for her video series Tropes vs. Women in Video Games, criticizing the gaming culture's depictions of female characters. Now, she has been caught on tape lying about herself as a gamer.
Video games are so interesting and engaging and interactive. I'm a gamer and I enjoy games.
I'm doing video games, so it's not exactly a fandom. I'm not a fan of video games. I actually had to learn a lot about video games in the process of making this.
But let's just stick to the thrust of her intellectual content. She claims that the damsel in distress trope objectifies women, robbing them of their agency, gives them no power to affect the story.
As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must be rescued by a male character. So the damsel trope typically makes men the subject of narratives while relegating women to the role of object. This is a form of objectification because as objects, damseled women are being acted upon, most often becoming or reduced to a prize to be won, a treasure to be found, or a goal to be achieved.
Conveniently forgetting the fact that if there is no damsel in distress, there is no story to begin with. Her analysis shows many examples of one-sided subjective opinions. I find myself particularly annoyed when she casually dismisses Double Dragon, by all objective standards an absolute arcade classic, as regressive crap.
The game has been remade, re-released, and ported to dozens of systems over the past 25 years, ensuring that Marion will be battered and damseled for each new generation to enjoy. Most recently, Double Dragon Neon in 2012 reintroduced new gamers to this regressive crap yet again, this time in full HD.
But let's move on to her claim.
The belief that women are somehow a naturally weaker gender is a deeply ingrained socially constructed myth, which of course is completely false.
Did you hear that? Women, according to Sarkeesian, aren't at all naturally physically weaker than men. It's a socially constructed myth. Again, it's a hell of a claim that she doesn't feel the need to logically support or prove. And yet it is absolutely trivial to disprove. Any look at any strength comparison statistics between men and women, world strength records, etc., will show you with no ambiguity that men on average will always outperform women. It has fuck all to do with social myths and everything to do with sexual dimorphism. Now let's check one more quick example. Here we have Jessica Williams from The Daily Show in a segment where she's trying to illustrate that many, basically all women, face harassment, many times on a daily basis. And she gathers a lot of women and goes over their stories. Like the woman who had a guy come up to her and say, "I want to fuck you in the ass."
I was walking down the street and this man came up literally inches behind me and was like, "I want to you in the ass."
Now Jessica, a little different from Valerie and Anita, brought some evidence to this trial. And that evidence is a video of her walking down the street and getting some uninvited attention.
An open construction site?
Hola. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? Thanks.
Or walking by a random security guard on his lunch break?
Thank you.
Now, did I just step into the fucking Twilight Zone or something? Or did those sound like pretty amiable compliments? She even said thank you, for fuck's sake.
Thanks. Thank you.
So essentially, her evidence basically disproved her point. She just proved, with airtight video evidence, that not all of the things that men say to women are bad. She just proved that men say nice things to women they don't know, and yet she, John, and the whole audience just roll along feeling like they proved a brilliant point. Now, let's do a quick acid test. Raise your hand if you've ever heard a female friend, relative, etc. say, "My boyfriend is a jerk." I'm guessing that's just about everybody. Now, let's open up our society script and check our line. Okay, I've got a copy right here. Okay, woman says, "My boyfriend's a jerk," and our line is, "Aww, you poor thing. Why is he so mean to you?" Have you ever gone off script with a woman in this situation and asked her any number of logically relevant and screamingly obvious questions like, "Well, why the fuck are you dating him?" Or, "Why is he a jerk? Are you ever a jerk to him?" Typically, that's when she turns off the waterworks, and with an annoyed look on her face, she pulls out the script, points to your line, and says, "Read this, dumbass." But wait, can't I hear both sides before? No! No, you can't! What the fuck is wrong with you? Do you hate women? Okay, whatever, I'm sorry. Now, let's continue our little acid test. Raise your hand if you ever heard a male friend or relative say, "My girlfriend's a jerk." I'm guessing that's less. Now, let's go to our script and see. Yes, here, no. Okay, it's here in the index. Okay, man says, "My girlfriend's a jerk." Society says, "Ha ha ha ha, you dumbass." It's funny. It's funny because it happens to men, and we don't have to care about what happens to men. If you ask a feminist, what is feminism? Not surprisingly, they can't all agree and tell you clearly and simply. But one of the common definitions is that feminism is the belief and struggle for the equal rights for men and women. And if you ask a feminist to give concrete examples of exactly what rights women are being denied, what rights, what privileges does a man have that a woman doesn't, they can't really give any. Yet oppositely, there are concrete examples of rights and privileges that are gender-based. They favor women in divorce court, in child custody, in parental birthrights. Okay, so check this out. A guy and a girl walk into a party. And no, that's not the start of a bad joke. Oh, wait a minute. Check that. It is the start of a bad joke. So, they go to a party where they don't know anyone, and at some point start making googly eyes at each other. The girl starts to put a few beers down. The guy, a lean, muscular cowboy, chooses not to. So when our cowgirl passes out on the couch, clear-headed Bob the cowboy tells everyone, "It's okay, I'll take care of her." The next thing Jane knows is she's awakened in a bedroom with a tongue to the pussy. Jane is drunk and horny, and a tongue to the pussy feels pretty good, especially from that lantern-jawed Bob the cowboy. So not only does she not say no, she starts thrusting her hips as Bob saddles up and rides. In the morning, Cowgirl Jane, now clear-headed, says, "That was dumb. I don't want to have a kid with this person. He raped me." Society and laws say, "He raped her." Society has opened to its line in the script and said, "Aww, you poor thing. Why was he so mean to you?" Now old Bob the cowboy is off to jail, where the rules to the rodeo have changed, and he might be the one who ends up hog-tied and ridden and broke-backed. And no matter how old Bob feels, no one can make old Jane have a baby if she got pregnant. That is all her choice. Now let's time warp back to the party and make a couple of changes. This time, it's Bob who puts down a few Coors, and Jane who chooses not to. So when Bob crashes on the couch, Jane says, "Don't worry everyone, I'll take care of him." The next thing old Bob knows is he is awakened in the bedroom with a blowjob. Bob is drunk and horny, and a blowjob feels pretty good, especially from that doe-eyed cutie Jane. So not only does he not say no, he starts thrusting his hips when Jane shouts, "Yee-haw!" and saddles up and rides. Remember, she's a cowgirl. In the morning, old Bob, now clear-headed, says, "That was dumb. I don't want to have a kid with this person. She raped me." Right? Right? Now remember, the only variable we changed in our little science experiment was cowboy and cowgirl. Oh, and Jane shouted, "Yee-haw!" But that must be a hell of a word, because it's one hell of a different result. Society and laws don't say she raped you. You didn't get raped, silly. You got some pussy. She actually kind of did you a favor. Society opens to its line and reads, "Ha ha ha ha, you dumbass." Fuckface. Yeah, fuckface. You can't rape someone with a vagina, silly. Not only does Jane not go to jail, no matter how old Bob feels about it, no one can make her not have a baby if she gets pregnant. That is all her choice. And moreover, old Bob's theoretical rapist can forcibly extract financial benefits from Bob to pay for raising a child he doesn't want. Kind of an expensive favor, really, all things considered. So, women don't have privileges? Women don't have objectively more rights based on nothing but gender? So why? Why do they do this? Why do many feminists lecture others on checking their privilege and deny that women have any of it? I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and explain what I think bitterness is all about. We feel bitterness when there's a situation we're involved in that just seems completely unfair, and worse, despite our best efforts, we couldn't stop it from happening. So again, I'll be devil's advocate and I'll just assume that Valerie Solanas had a good reason for hating many of the men in her life. I don't know the details, but let's just assume that about all the guys she knew took advantage of her, cheated her, totally screwed her over. Now, she has every right to feel angry and embittered at those assholes. The problem with the word privilege is that it's the vague, happy band-aid that can be applied to any situation. Essentially, when it's used, what the speaker is really saying is, it's not my fault. I didn't have privilege, I didn't have power, so of course it's not my fault. And I think that strikes to the heart of the reason that people are becoming so fed up with feminism these days. Can you make up your minds, feminists? Are you committed, empowered warriors? Or are you perpetual victims and it's never your fault? Are we not allowed to take the common sense approach that sometimes it's the man's fault and sometimes it's the woman's, depending on the specifics of the situation. Just consider things from a man's perspective for a moment. Man who's socially conditioned to only have intellectual pillow fights with women because he's not allowed to call her a dumbass, even when she's being a dumbass. Okay, so Jessica Williams provides evidence contrary to her point and gets generally lauded? Okay, feminists, can I say that that's bullshit? Is that too strong a word? Okay, I think it's baloney. Still too harsh? Alright, can I call it bubblegum? I think that's a bunch of bubblegum. Anita Sarkeesian lies about being a gamer? Am I allowed to call her a liar? I have proof. Her analysis ranges from subjective to flat out wrong. She uses and doesn't credit other people's gameplay footage. And her sloppy research and conclusions garnered awards? I think that's a bit unfair. I mean, I'm not going to write a manifesto or anything. I don't wish her any bodily harm. But am I allowed to call bubblegum on her? No? Not even Solanas? The woman's so embittered with men that she unabashedly called for the extermination of all of them? No? Oh, that's right. She's a hero. I forgot about that. She's actually a hero. So, yes, when she called for the killing of all men, not just men in power, not just rich men, not just the specific ones that she hates, but all men, including devoted fathers, kind grandfathers, protective brothers, uncles, little boys, old men, they should all be cut up with box cutters. She had no responsibility for her words. How could she? After all, she was a woman, and say it with me, women don't have privilege! So, you made it through my diatribe, and you're wondering, of course, hey, where the fuck is the thumbnail? If you like this video, then rate it, comment on it, subscribe to my channel, tell your friends. If you don't like it and want to stab me in the neck, that's fine. Just let me know why in the comments. The less frothing and more rational, the greater chance I'll take it seriously.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bubblegum!